When I first heard the announcement that they were going to do a live action How to Train Your Dragon, I was pretty concerned for the same reason that a lot of other people probably were. We've seen some of these live action, just complete bastardizations by Disney over the years. And some have had massive success, and some have done a much better job of adapting the source material than others for sure. But How to Train Your Dragon, in my mind, is one of the best animated movies that exists out there, period. And really, I like the whole series. I don't like 3 quite as much as I like the first 2. But that first How to Train Your Dragon movie is a fantastic story. So when I heard that this is what was happening, a little bit concerned. And we heard some of these things about casting, a little bit of a controversy over casting because Astrid does not look like Astrid. We've been over this multiple times. Then I saw the first trailer, and the first trailer basically looked like every shot had been recreated from the movie. And I thought to myself, if they stick to that, this movie has a chance to be pretty successful. And I got to be honest, when I went in there, I went and saw this movie opening day, actually. And to me, this is how live action adaptations should be done for the most part. It's a handful of things that I would change specifically, one of them being casting. But when it comes to the music, when it comes to the cinematography, when it comes to nearly every shot and every single story beat essentially remaining exactly the same, to me, that's what I think the live action adaptations should be. Because you're taking something that people absolutely love. And I think you should do as much as you can to keep it that way. And to me, that's what How to Train Your Dragon did for the most part. It's a little bit longer. I think the original one's like 1 hour, 35 minutes. This is around 2 hours of time frame. You get a couple extended sequences here or there. And this is what I think it did worse than the original. I think the translation from animation to live action in a handful of circumstances did hurt it. And I think one of the biggest one is just the facial expressions of the characters. I think Astrid was probably hurt a lot by this, but Gabra was also hurt by this, especially because Gabra is such a crazy cartoonish character in general, with multiple, fake limbs and with the massive mustache in his face. He's a big guy. I think that, and I don't think Nick Frost did anything wrong with his portrayal, but I think that's a character that doesn't translate great in live action. And I think that Astrid, race swapping aside, for her not being blonde, but also the expressions that she's able to have, I think she suffered a little bit. Hiccup to a lesser extent. I think the guy who played Hiccup did a great job embodying the character, not trying to do an impression of the animated series. It was his own, but I think he did a great job embodying the character. There were a handful of things that I actually enjoyed seeing live action a little bit more. And one of them was the legit action sequences. Obviously, the big fight towards the end of the movie. I thought seeing that brought to live action made it a little bit more impactful. And the flying scene in general made it a little bit more impactful to see this happening in quote unquote real life. Stoic, who's a great character, he had a couple of additional and sometimes just slightly altered lines, especially right at the end before Hiccup's about to take off on Toothless again to fight the big dragon, that I thought were really powerful. And Gerard Butler did a fantastic job with the delivery. He played him in the original one. They brought him to do the live action as well. That was very good. One of the things that I think it does a little bit better, actually, is Snotlout's character. He gets a little bit added to his character, a little father-son arc as well. So you really have 2 father-son stories in there. Snotlout's story, it's just a very small element that they added in. But I do think that benefited a little bit from this specific movie. It was 100% the right move to keep the dragons looking exactly stylized the way that they did in the animated version. So you can see all of Toothless's expressions and things like that. Like if they had made the decision to, hey, we want a more realistic looking dragon for this live action world, and they wanted to make them, more like Game of Thrones looking, I think that would have been a terrible decision. The dragons looked exactly the way that they looked in the animation, just kind of brought into this world. And I think it plays perfectly, especially because Toothless is the star. Everybody loves Toothless. Okay. And if they had changed that, I think it would have been a big miss for them. A handful of things that you can look at. Obviously, you got to explain away why there's 1 or 2 black Vikings sitting around. They talked about that. They changed the story a little bit from, Burke just being an island to Burke is a location. And It's not to say that Black Vikings were from there. That's not what they did. They said, hey, look, the dragons are a problem. We've found the best dragon trainers from everywhere that Vikings have traveled and brought the best dragon fighters here, like the best fighters we could find from everywhere Vikings have ever gone out to. So that's kind of the implication for why different people are there. And I think Astrid would have been a lot better if they put a blonde wig on her. There's no excuse to not put the blonde wig on her. They absolutely should have. I think she gave an okay performance. One of the people hurt most from live action to animation. But in terms of the story, of Hiccup's story, of these characters, how they interact, who they are, it was not exactly, but pretty damn close. The same storyline, the same beats, the same reactions, even sometimes shot for shot, the cinematography from the animation. And I get some people just don't care. I've seen it animated. I want to see it here. There are some people that would prefer to watch live action things over animation. There are some people that want to see things brought into live action. And if you're going to do it, I get for just saying, fuck it, I've seen it already. I've seen a better version of it. Why do I see this one? I totally get that like thought process. For me, if there's going to be a live action adaptation of something, this is how it should be done. I think that this is the best live action adaptation of an animated project that I've ever seen. And I think that this is, again, I have some criticism and things that I would change about it. But for the most part, it was great. And it remains the same great story that the animated one was. And maybe new audiences can go to see it, or a different experience for some audiences. And more importantly to me, one of the reasons I've always loved it, it is a great father-son message and story throughout it. And really a great message in general, I think, to kids who are becoming men. Like when you look at Hiccup's story, I think it's a fantastic message that it sends, and I love it. I love the animated, and I don't think this one is maybe as perfect, but I still think it's a really good movie, a great adaptation, and 100% think people should go see it.